Hey everybody, my name is Divy. I'm the CEO of Paladin. We deploy autonomous drones to 911 calls, and we're excited to talk about DFR and the first ever Class Bravo BVLOS waiver.
Hi everyone, my name is Luis Figueredo. You might know me as a drone detective. I fly drones in public safety, and we're going to be talking about DFR.
Hi everyone, I'm Greg from Pilot Institute. We train drone pilots all over the country.
Hi, my name is Haye from DroneXL, where we cover all the drone news on our website.
Welcome to the latest episode of the PiXL Drone Show, our weekly podcast where we talk to industry professionals about what they do in the UAS space.
From professionals who use drone to fly inspection missions to public safety users or even drone light shows, you will learn on the PiXL Drone Show that drones are much more than just toys.
Hey, what's up, Haye?
Hey, how are you, man?
Good. Long time no see.
Yeah, right. What's going on this week? What do we have?
I just finished an event with the FAA, a live event. It's been back to back. Basically, I feel like a movie star moving from one set to the next. This is my third event, and it's not even noon yet. It's not even 11
There you go.
yet.
Now, if you only got paid to movie star big bucks, then we'd all be happy, right?
Yeah, I wish. I'm going to start signing autographs pretty soon.
Yeah.
So, what's up in your life?
Getting ready for the summer, planning some travel, but otherwise quiet and keeping up with drone news. And as always, there's always new stuff going on, right? I mean, at the time that we record this, we have the FAA's Drone Safety Day coming up. I mean, that's a big deal.
Yep.
And I think that's something you might be able to tell us more about as well.
Yeah, that actually is happening tomorrow, so it will be done by the time this goes live. But FAA Safety Day is cool. It's a cool concept. It's kind of like a focus. Ooh, I'm getting a croissant delivered here.
Oh my God, by drone.
I know this is royal service here.
Croissants by drone. Here we go.
So Drone Safety Awareness Day it used to be Drone Safety Awareness Week. They changed it to Drone Safety Day to one day, which I think is better. I think it kind of makes a bit more centric. But it's the day that we try to bring awareness to people that may not be aware of what drones do and doing it right. So they have the flight right is their motto this week, and the right means something. So you have to register your drone and do a bunch of other things together. So that's I think it's important for people to become aware of what is going on in the in the drone world, especially for people that just got their drone, a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, and they may not be aware of what needs to get done. So I think it's pretty cool.
I totally agree. Well, we can definitely talk more about that. I see that we have our guests coming in, so let's get started with the show, I guess, right?
Yeah, that sounds good. So today, actually, we're talking to Divy, and we've seen Divy before because we talked about Paladin drone, and we said we were going to do a follow-up eventually on the drone as first responders program that they've been working on, and they reached out a couple of weeks ago and said that they had some news. So we're bringing them on this week. We're going to also be talking to Luis. He's a DFR operator, and he's going to join us pretty soon. So let's bring them on the show.
Awesome.
All right. Well, guys, welcome to the show. It's good to see Divy again. And Luis, it's been a while. We saw each other in Texas. Welcome to the show as well.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us. It's I think it's always an honor to be invited back. It means we didn't do something too bad the first time.
No,
right.
You're part of a very exclusive group, the people that have made a second appearance on the PiXL Drone Show. So you're very welcome.
Great. Can we get badges? That would be great. Patches for that.
Yeah,
we'll give you a punch card. Yeah, we'll give you a punch card. Yeah. You get a free croissant after 5.
There you go. Delivered by drone.
So Divy, let's recap kind of what we talked about in the last one for those of our followers that maybe haven't seen the episode. Tell us a little bit about what you do at Paladin and kind of tell us about what DFR is, because this is what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. Let me go into Paladin. So my name's Divy. I'm the CEO and founder of Paladin. And Paladin deploys autonomous drones to 911 calls. Our goal is to give first responders, such as firefighters, police officers, EMS, anyone whose calling is to help people, get them a live overhead view of an emergency before they arrive on scene. We've seen that this can help increase situational awareness, it can help decrease response times, and it can help save lives. DFR, I think Lewis is a DFR operator, so it might be better to hear it directly from him, what that means for you and what that means for agencies.
Yeah, absolutely. Lewis, tell us a little bit more about your background and what DFR is and what it does really for you.
All right. I just want to make a correction to what Divy said previously. It's police first, then firefighters. He tends to say firefighters first, police, but police first and firefighters. A little bit about my background. I've been in law enforcement for about 19 years. And started the drone program at my department in about 2017. There was nothing much going on the East Coast as far as UAS programs. Everything was either in Texas or out west. So I convinced the higher ups here to start the program. We rolled it out. It was kind of small for the first few years, and then it started growing. So we have a pretty big program now that we operate, and then I started looking into the whole drone as a first responder component to having a UAS program. Met Divy, started looking into Paladin. I like the solution of having a drone that you can send out and you don't have to have range anxiety. I guess that's what I call it. So at least in this setting here, where we have it's not flat. We have tall buildings. The city is pretty large. So we needed a solution that we can send out further than what we're used to with, DJI products or Autel. We just needed that longer range so we can successfully operate a DFR program. Just like it stands for, DFR, drone as a first responder, a 911 call comes in, and the teleoperator would enter the address of the emergency call, basically hit a button, and the drone's going to autonomously flight to that location and provide the much needed situational awareness that we require so we can assess the scene and give it back to command staff or even the responding officers that are going to that location.
That sounds awesome. Before we really get into this conversation, can you give us a little bit of background about what it took to get a drone as a first responder program launched and organized?
It was, as far as getting the BVLOS, it was not as hard as I thought. I had been hearing all these horror stories about it. It was a long process. Initially, when we started our program, when we got our JCOA, back then it took anywhere between 4 to 6 months just for the jurisdictional. And I was expecting that, this was going to take a lot longer. Divy kept telling me it was going to be quicker. I didn't believe him. But yeah, it was fairly quick. As long as, once we satisfied everything that the FAA required and we got the approvals, and then it was just a matter of picking a launch site that we're comfortable with. And here we are. I'm actually at the launch site as we're doing this interview.
So what is the big advantage to you for this DFR program? We've seen drones being used as a tool when you get on scene and you take off, and then you're it's drone as a second responder, right? As opposed to drone as first responder. What's the big advantage to you doing this as DFR?
Right. So what you just described now, Greg, that's more of like using the drone as a reactive tool, right? The officer arrives on the scene, it can be a fleeing suspect, a missing person, and the drone is launched. DFR is almost like using it proactively, where, the call comes in. The response time is a lot shorter than what takes a police car to get to the scene. And we've realized that fairly quick, where, we have a lot of patrol cars working during a shift, but with the calls that we send our DFR with the drone to, the drone always gets there quicker. So it can be just to assess the scene. It's getting there a lot quicker. So you have eyes on the scene before a radio car gets there, or a patrol car. And it's just the response time. I think the overall, the biggest benefit of a DFR program is the response time.
How much faster is it than what you would traditionally be able to do when you send out an officer with a car?
So every location is going to be different. What the test that we've done here at this location is within 30, pretty much under 90 seconds, we can have the drone at that location. Obviously, if it's going to be a call that's not that far, we can be there within 20 to 30 seconds. But we've tested pretty much the perimeter, and we can get to the farthest point within 90 seconds. And it all depends. If a call comes in and a patrol car happens to be a block or two away, it's going to be a quick response time. So each call is going to be different. So it's kind of hard to track that specific response time, because like I said, each call is going to be different. But from what we've seen, we can be anywhere between 30 to 90 seconds within the city.
And while the drone is flying to that location, police officers are still going there as well with their vehicles, right? It's not one or the other. It's both are happening at the same time?
Correct. Both are happening at the same time.
Yeah. Okay.
What does it look like from your side as far as information gathering? What are you looking at? Can you ask the drone to get closer, to get a different angle? How does that work from a physical standpoint?
So once the location's entered into Watchtower, the drone it gets dispatched there, and as soon as it arrives, it starts doing an orbit around the location, right? And then once you're happy with the angle that you're looking at, and you got the scene covered, you just as easy as hitting stop on the Watchtower. The drone stops, and then you can manipulate the camera, zoom in, zoom out, and you can cover all the angles. I think the first time I saw it, I was amazed by it, because it's like you've never seen something like this before, right? You're as an officer, you're used to like just hearing the communication coming over the radio, and and it's the caller that's calling it in. And sometimes the callers don't give out the best information, or they don't paint the correct picture. So now you're getting there and you're seeing this live, and you're not only just relying on what dispatch is telling you or what you're hearing on the radio, you're actually seeing it. I think it's a game changer. As far as public safety, this technology it's a game changer. Hopefully everybody, realizes that and starts catching on to it, because it's the response time, the situational awareness, everything comes into factor.
Yeah. And kind of a follow-up for Divy, from a software perspective and a UI user interface perspective, how much time do you guys spend with the user, maybe on the field as they're using it, to make tweaks so that the software is as easy as possible? Because I'm guessing, Lewis, on your side as well, you get a lot of other things going on at the same time. You may be driving, you may be doing all these things. So Divy, is that something you guys take really into account?
So in terms of building a product that works, I'm not a first responder. In order to build something, I have to know what is going on. I have to know what our users are saying. It's the only way we can make something better. So when we launch into a new city, I try to be there for 1 to 2 weeks, because there are always things to iron out. There are always feature requests. One of the biggest changes we've recently made to our platform is how we control the gimbal. Before, we had fairly simple controls where you would hit arrows on the screen, and that would move the camera around as they needed to zoom in or zoom out, or move it down once we got to the scene. And now we've adapted that to start looking into clicking and dragging, having a lot more precise control of the gimbal itself. And these are all changes we have to make, because we're not the end user. The firefighters, police officers, yeah, all right, Lewis. The first responders are the users, and that's the only way we build a product that actually works and is useful to them. So for me and for Paladin as a whole, that's the number one priority. How do we actually build a great product? How do we keep changing the user interface? And all of that, everything that Paladin is today has been built off of feedback from our first responders.
So if you fly drones for commercial reasons, which includes flying a drone as a first responder, you have to, of course, take into account all the different rules and regulations from the FAA. And one of them is you're not able to fly beyond visual line of sight. Can we talk about how important being able to fly beyond visual line of sight is, and what you guys have done in order to be able to achieve that?
Yeah, I'll get right into it. we have been adamant on building a system that is safe in order to fly over all these different areas without beyond visual line of sight, meaning the ability to send a drone farther than the operator can see. When you're talking about a city which has a large area, 911 calls are completely random. If the drone can't go that far, it drastically decreases the effectiveness of that drone. Not to mention when you're in in areas with lots of LTE connections, lots of tall buildings, all of these different radio waves interfering, you'll most likely lose signal with that drone anyways, even if you had the ability to go beyond visual line of sight. When we get beyond visual line of sight, and we've been fortunate enough to now do it repeatedly, now when a 911 call comes in, we can legally cover the entire, if not the majority, if not the entirety of a city. A drone can take off, go exactly where it needs to go. And this is all through building up safety cases with the FAA by proving that the system works. And part of that really is our LTE technology that's built right into Knighthawk. When we fly drones further away beyond visual line of sight, we do not lose signal. We don't, because it's bouncing off of several different cell towers. There are multiple layers of redundancy. And by working closely with departments and getting other BVLOS waivers approved, we are seeing what the FAA wants in terms of safety cases. And these are all things that we integrate into the department. We train them on, these are what we have seen. This is how we need to adopt it for this specific department. And that leads us to, I think, one of the most exciting developments for us at Paladin. We have, through Elizabeth, New Jersey, gotten the first ever beyond visual line of sight waiver in Class Bravo airspace. For those unfamiliar, Class Bravo is the airspace around most major airports. And this is where there are lots of flights going in and out. There are people in those planes. If anything happens to a drone in these airspaces, it could cause catastrophic loss of life. And to be able to fly in these areas, to be trusted by our cities that we're working with, and by building technology that actually works, this is something that we're super, super excited to get and to keep operations safe as we operate in these areas.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, and for the people listening or watching to the show, Elizabeth in New Jersey is pretty much across the river from Manhattan. And on the other side of Elizabeth, you have Newark International Airport, which is one of the busiest airports here around New York City. Lewis, for you as a drone operator, how important is beyond visual line of sight from your perspective?
I think it's extremely important because you can't operate a successful DFR program unless you have that waiver. And hopefully, one day we'll get past, the FAA will get rid of the regulations for visual observers, and, it can truly be a beyond visual line of sight, right? Because up until now, you still require the visual observer, either at the launch location or throughout the city. But yeah, it's extremely important. I think until all those safety features get worked out and the programs start justifying themselves, I think hopefully in the future the FAA will see that, and there'll be less restrictions on these type of programs.
And I have a question for the both of you. How do you get the FAA comfortable with the detect and avoid technology, especially when you fly in the Class B airspace? Because I'm going to guess that this is the biggest thing the FAA is going to balk at, is how you're going to avoid an aircraft in the airspace or another drone in the airspace.
There are a lot of detect and avoid technologies that are just getting started, and we're excited to see how the FAA approves or denies their use cases. For Paladin specifically, our detect and avoid that allows us to get beyond visual line of sight is largely based on visual observers and our LTE technology. The ability to communicate with the drone as other aircraft are coming in, as well as never losing connection with the drone itself. Our goal, as Lewis alluded to, is to find safety cases where we can remove that visual observer entirely and hopefully do it in a very cost-effective manner for these cities. The majority of cities don't have budgets. They're very understaffed. They need resources, and they're not in a position to be spending millions of dollars on technology like this. And it's on us as the industry, as a company, and as individuals to find a way to make it happen. Because if we don't, then who will?
Yeah. Can you talk us through the waiver process? Like what was required to be able to get a BVLOS waiver from the FAA?
Yeah, I can briefly outline that. When Paladin goes to a city, the very first thing we do is understand how DFR, assuming it gets approved, would be useful for that city. What are the different types of emergencies we're sending this on? It needs to be very directed. It needs to be very specific, and we need to be very open about how this program is being used. Once we start asking those questions to the decision makers, whether they're the chiefs, whether they're the city council, or whether we have a town hall, all of those questions help inform us about what is this use case? What are the different areas we're going to be flying in? What are the different obstacles we need to keep an eye out for? All of that information then essentially gets distilled down to a pretty large document called our ConOps. And that is what we eventually submit to the FAA. And that is a mix of our understanding of the city, our understanding of the airspace, our understanding of our own experience with safety features that the FAA wants, and implementing that with the technology that we have created to notify others, to have visual observers be involved with the operation. We submit that, and it's not quite to a point where it's, you fill out a form online and you can get these waivers. It's very specific because each airspace is different. But we're here to take that on. And from then on, if things look good, we have a large meeting with the FAA, and they point out all the holes in what we have put out. And we keep going through it, and eventually through back and forth, if the FAA is comfortable with our safety decisions, then it's hopefully we get things approved, and that's what happened with our Class Bravo waiver.
So the quick follow-up on that, the FAA had what's called, or still has, the tactical beyond visual line of sight waiver available to public safety. Did you guys build on top of that and use some of what the FAA allowed to do this in order to build your case?
No, so the tactical beyond visual, the TBVLOS, as often called, is pretty separate from the waivers that we are getting. That waiver is phenomenal for manual flight cases when you are arriving on scene with a unit and you need to get around a building and you no longer have line of sight with that drone. But it is fairly limited in that operation. It's great for what it is, which is manual flight, be able to legally go around these obstacles. For BVLOS that we get, this is a 3-mile radius that we are getting from our launch site, meaning we can take off and up to 3 nautical miles go to these areas. And that's significantly different and based off a very different framework than TBVLOS. And we're very excited that TBVLOS is a thing because that's, I think, something that's a more repeatable process for departments now. And as they're looking to increase their drone operations, every single waiver, every single use case, every single flight that they do is a win for the entire industry.
And another follow-up on that, the Drone Advisory Committee report that came out a couple of months ago had recommendation to start dividing beyond visual line of sight flights into 2 different categories, what they call EVLOS. I think it was kind of a local beyond visual line of sight as opposed to a much longer beyond visual line of sight. Do you see a need for the FAA to relax the rules for what you would consider, well, I would consider what you guys do in this case as a local beyond visual line of sight, 3 miles as opposed to 60 miles, 100 miles away? Do you see a need for that distinction?
I think they're pretty different use cases because when you're talking about going 60 miles away, that's a lot, right? That's a lot of airspace, and it's difficult to maintain safety in those. Now, for our specific use case, for first responders in cities, infrastructures exist to allow, like, local beyond visual line of sight. I'm not sure what the exact terminology is, but for our purposes, whatever it takes to get a safe operation up and running, we are full speed ahead on that. So as the FAA keeps, seeing what they want to do, we're here to listen to them. We're here to work with them. And so far, I think things are moving in the exact right direction that we want, because separation or no separation, the truth of the matter is BVLOS is here. DFR is here. It's just getting started. And we definitely see change. We definitely expect to see changes in how that will actually be implemented. It's our job to be right at the head of that and make sure that we're making conscious decisions to advance the industry.
Now, maybe this question is for Lewis. With a BVLOS waiver, the role of a visual observer is still very important, of course. Does that person, is there just one, or do you need multiple people that observe? And also, do they observe just the drone, or do they observe the airspace? How does that work?
So we're operating with a network of visual observers, and not only is it for airspace, but it's also for the drone itself. So it's a network of visual observers, not only at the launch location, but throughout the city. And
does the FAA require you to keep a set of eyes on the drone at all times, or do you need to just monitor the airspace, make sure there are no other manned aircraft in the vicinity?
We have to monitor the drone.
You have to see the drone, yeah, okay.
Lewis, quick correction. The waiver itself is for the airspace. We have to have, we have to constantly, so we have to be constantly monitoring the airspace, which is why we use a network, so that we're able to identify the pilot knows where the drone is, and the visual observers all know where the drone is. So when something comes in, it's about monitoring the airspace specifically.
Okay.
So we talked to a drone testing site in North Dakota a couple months ago now, and they were developing a network of structure that would help with beyond visual line of sight. And here we're talking about extended beyond visual line of sight. They want to do inspections that go pretty long ways, and not have to use LTE in this case to keep the drone in control. Is LTE critical to DFR in your case?
Absolutely. When we started with Paladin, within the first 2 weeks, realized that you can't do it without LTE. You really can't. At least not for our specific use case of being in 911 response. The minute you send a drone a mile and a half max, and that's if you have line of sight, you're on top of a building, which most cities can't do. Like, they don't have the manpower or the infrastructure to support that. You lose signal. There are great technologies out there, like OcuSync is industry leading. It is phenomenal in what it can do. But what it can do is mainly for manual flight. And when you start going further away, there is not an easy way to solve that problem of losing that connection. And LTE is one of the best ways to solve that challenge.
Yep.
So with the BVLOS waiver and using drones to respond to 911 calls, I mean, we know that, of course, 911 calls, they happen at any given moment, so we can't really predict the weather or a lot of other things, the timing of those calls. Are you guys allowed and able to fly drones when it rains, when there's fog, when it's in the middle of the night, when there's a parade happening in a neighborhood? Like, what are some of the other restrictions or considerations that you have to take into account when responding to these 911 calls?
One of the biggest considerations is weather. Yeah, or Lewis, you want to take this or you want me? I'm fine either way.
I was going to say the only consideration is it's the weather.
Yep.
That's the biggest one's going to be the weather. The winds, rain, And I think the weather is the biggest one.
Who makes that determination? Is it the pilot in command who decides whether you can fly the drone, or is that decision made elsewhere?
Well, it's ultimately going to be the pilot in command that's going to make the decision. But you're going to know what at what winds you can fly, and how many inches of rain per hour the equipment can can operate in. So it's going to be the pilot in command that's going to make that decision.
And another question for you, Louis, is how has this been received from a public standpoint? We've talked to other people, and privacy sometimes is a bit of an issue. Have you seen anything from the community as far as privacy problems?
There hasn't been anything yet, and I'm sure Divy's going to talk about this. But once the drone gets dispatched, the camera's on the horizon, so it's not aimed down. It only starts aiming to the location once it starts arriving on scene. I can give you a really quick example. In the first few days, there was a call. The drone got there, and then followed by the patrol car that responded. And once the officers got there, the caller asked them, "Hey, was that a police drone that was here?" And they said, "Yes, that's that's part of our drone as a first responder program." And the caller was amazed. They said that a few seconds after they hung up the phone with 911, the drone was over their property. So they're extremely happy with the response time, and they had nothing but good things to say about it.
Are there any success stories that you can share about how the drones were able to either identify somebody or prevent something or save a life? Or are there any recent success stories that you can share?
Well, it's only been, I think we're on the third week, and within the first few days, there was an arrest that was, resulted from a DFR flight.
All right, and how many flights have you guys been able to perform in that period of, let's say, the 3 weeks that you mentioned?
So we're generating multiple flights per shift, and it's constantly, some days obviously are more than others, but it's been a steady flow.
Now, from the Chula Vista story, we know that all the drone flights that are done by the police department there, they have a database online where all of those drone flights are basically made public. So if I live there and I see a drone flying overhead, I can go online, I can check it out and see, oh, this is this mission, the drone went there, blah, blah, blah. Is that something that you guys do as well? Do you make that publicly available, the drone flight information?
We're not at that point yet, but the data is getting stored. We do have all the information for each flight. Hopefully, down the line, Chula Vista has been doing it for a lot longer than anybody else has. So they've been able to work out all those issues. And we're all learning from them, from what they've done. And eventually, I think that's, transparency should be, also something, with any DFR program. And we'll get there.
What's on your want list? Oh, go ahead, Divy.
No, I was just going to add real quick that it's the only way forward for DFR is through transparency, and all of the flights were required by law to be submitting them to the FAA. And I believe any video that's recorded is under public information through through the Freedom of Information Act. Yeah. And we want to make sure we're following that to a T. I don't want drones following me around in my city, just not knowing exactly what it is that we're doing. And which is why every single time we fly, we're at least 200 feet above the ground, cameras pointing at the horizon. If anything is recorded, that is stored in a database that's available through Freedom of Information Act, and that's all available to the public. And we're hoping to start making interfaces to make that information just as public as possible. It's the only way that this is going to work.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. Louis, if you had a list of things that you would want to see for future iterations of the program, what would it be? What's missing at the moment that would make your life even easier? And Divy is writing down everything.
Taking notes.
This is where Is this where I give out all my free ideas?
Yes.
I got my notebook.
Wait, but there's gonna be a lot of competitors watching this, so listen, I think, and I've said this across the board, not only to Divy, I've said this to everybody. I think the biggest limitation to DFR right now is range, and I think you can't operate a DFR program with anything but an LTE drone. I think that's the future. I think DFR is here to stay, and I just think the hardware needs to catch up with where the software is now. There's great software platforms out there for DFR. The equipment just isn't there yet as far as the range. We all know that DJI, the M300, the M30, Autel has, the Evo. They have the Dragonfish. So there is good equipment out there. The problem is the range. How can we, be in, the pilot in command for a DFR program, be at a location and know that they're going to hit go or enter the address and know that the drone's going to make it 2 miles, 3 miles without having somebody, on the roof with the controller, aiming the controller at the drone so you don't lose communication. So I think, the only suggestion, and this is to everybody, would be, LTE.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're talking about transmission. Is battery an issue as well at this stage, or really is the transmitter the missing link or the low link?
I think everybody would like to have a drone that flies, does what the Dragonfish does, right? A 2-hour flight, and so the Nighthawk has a 55-minute flight time, and from what I've experienced so far, we've been able to handle multiple calls on one flight. So I think that sweet spot in battery life, I think it's going to be within that hour mark, because a call happens, the drone comes back in, you can swap the batteries out. But in case you're a busy enough city where you need to handle multiple calls per flight, I think that hour mark. So I think like you said, Greg, I think LTE is the first thing that needs to be worked out, and then obviously battery technology. And longer flight times wouldn't hurt the program.
Yeah, and that's a follow up maybe for the both of you. Is a fixed wing a better platform than a quadcopter or octocopter, or is what you have now perfect for what you need to do? And maybe Divy has a different answer.
I think for our situation here, I think the quadcopter right now, I think it's the best solution. I think obviously each city is going to have a different application. If you're covering longer areas, something like a Dragonfish would make sense, because of the longer flight time and the range, and eventually getting that range on that equipment. I think a platform like that would make more sense. But for our application here, I think a quadcopter is fine, and we're happy with the results so far.
Just adding on to that,
you had a bit of delay,
yeah. Adding on to that, quadcopters are the industry standard right now. We are excited to see what other platforms, other companies are releasing, because what we've realized is there's really no one size fits all. Every single city is different. Their needs are different, and quadcopter fills most of them, because you can, at least with Nighthawk, we're able to get a pretty decent flight time, which can cover a large portion of an area and have the maneuverability that comes with having a quadcopter design. But that doesn't mean that other designs out there can't be better for specific use cases. If I was to create a system for, let's say, a wildfire in large areas, I would never recommend a quadcopter. I would recommend find a way to get a fixed wing, because you need that flight time. You need some super directional antennas in those non-connected areas so that you never lose signal. So it really depends on the use case. But I think for cities, and the cities that we're looking for, right, where urban, suburban areas, quadcopter seems to make the most sense so far.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, right? I mean, with a fixed wing, you get speed, you get range. With a quadcopter, you get the ability to fix a perspective and just have a drone hover in one spot and just keep that same view. We spoke about how range and transmission is important for a DFR drone. Like, what other things are crucial for a DFR drone apart from, let's say, battery life? I mean, are you guys looking for weather resistance, or is it specific payloads that you would prefer for a DFR drone? And this can be either for Divy or Lewis.
I listen. I think what would be the perfect drone for a DFR program? One that has a long flight time, has a really good payload with a good zoom camera, thermal, and of course weather resistant. A one that can fly in rain, snow, sleet, really warm temperatures, really cold temperatures. I think if somebody does develop that drone, I think that obviously would be the best for an DFR application.
I think one of the best platforms would be all-weather system with a great gimbal, ability to fly for a long time and have unlimited range.
So if anyone who's listening right now wanted to get started with a DFR program, what's the first step? What should they be looking into? What are some of the tips maybe that you want to give them? Things that you wish you had known when you started, maybe for you, Lewis?
I have to be careful with this answer so I don't offend anybody. I think if someone's shopping around for a DFR program, I think obviously give everybody a shot. See which one you feel more comfortable with. With me, I wanted to all-in-one solution. I think that's kind of the easiest way to explain it. I wanted to have the software, have the hardware, and have someone that can assist with the application process for the BVLOS. Because a lot of times, even for non-DFR stuff, you get a lot of these dealers and retailers, and they'll come in and they'll try to sell you the software, but then then they leave. You're on your own for the hardware, and then most importantly, you're on your own to deal with the FAA. So I think if that's the case, I think I probably would have given up. I wouldn't have tried to pursue it anymore. But I think that's important as a customer for anything, right? You want to go with whatever the best product is out there, and whatever the best solution. All in one stop, right? Like you get equipment, you get the software, and you get the FAA assistance.
So in the show we did last week, we were talking about the same thing, DFR programs, and the numbers that we were given is that about 5% of, I think it's like 20 or 30,000 first responder agencies in the United States, that only 5% roughly currently has a drone program. Can you guys perhaps shine some light on that? Like, why is that? Why is that percentage so low? Are first responders getting the value of a drone, or is there still work to be done there yet? Or are there other challenges that first responders are dealing with that kind of keeps that number low?
Yeah, I'll take this real quick, Lewis. The biggest thing that we have seen is there's a lot of it takes momentum. A lot of when you try to start anything, it takes a lot of momentum. It takes a lot of work to get it off the ground. Whether you're starting a drone program, whether you have a program and you want to start DFR. And a lot of times it can feel that there is no easy access to the information that you need to make a successful program. Like if you're a small town and you're trying to start a drone program because you've heard stories of all these bigger departments using drones and having successes, you want to do it yourself, but then where do you start? How do you get started? I think that friction there stops a lot of departments from trying. Now, what we have seen is more and more departments are at least allocating budgets for these drone programs themselves, which is a huge win for the industry. And what we're seeing is if you're looking to get involved with drones, like forget even other companies that can help you. There's Facebook groups, there's like LinkedIn groups, there's all sorts of places where you can get involved, and they're just filled with other first responders who are making this successful. So I think in order to have this growth that everybody wants to see in this industry, it's finding ways to make it easy. And that's definitely something that we pride ourselves on doing, is we want to be there for the entire duration of a DFR program, of that entire drone program to begin with. Because there are so many unknowns. It's difficult to figure out what drones you want. It's difficult to figure out what software you need, what training you need, what sort of maintenance that's going to require, where are you going to get the budget for it, not to mention the entire FAA process. So in doing this, working with small cities first, we really, at Paladin, figured out a lot of those things, and we're really excited that other departments across the country are now trusting us to help them through the exact same thing. Because I think by being there to provide it all, we were pretty honest about what works and what doesn't work. One of the first things I'll ask a client is, hey, what are you actually going to use this for? And we need to determine if Paladin is a good fit, because if it's not, I'm happy to send you to someone else who would be better used for your specific need right now. But I think that's the only way to keep moving it forward.
Are there other cities that you know of that people should be looking into if they're trying to do some research? We obviously know of Chula Vista. Anybody else out there that comes to mind?
There are lots of departments that are starting DFR programs. Some cities that we have worked closely with are Memorial Villages in Houston, very small suburban area where they're currently conducting DFR operations every single day. Elizabeth in New Jersey is obviously one, and we have several others that we are just spinning up that I'm excited to share in the near future. And if you look kind of across the country, Chula Vista has been really a beacon of success for the entire industry, and there's a lot that everybody can learn from them. And we are committed to making DFR happen for everybody, whether that's a big city, whether it's a small city, whether it's a medium-sized city, right? What, did I cover everything there?
I think so.
All the different sizes. We want
So I have a question, and I'd like to get an answer from both of you, because I think you have different perspectives probably on this. If we fast forward 5 years from now, where would you like DFR to be, specifically for what's relevant for you and your environment, but maybe even for the nation as a bigger?
All right. So in 5 years, I envision at least our program, multiple launch locations. And hopefully by then, it'll be a true, BVLOS, where you don't need the visual observer. And hopefully by then there's technology that can support that as far as, monitoring the airspace. And I hope more departments and more cities pick up the technology. I think I think as far as drones and public safety, I think DFR is the future. I've been saying that for a while. People that know me are probably tired of hearing me say that. But yeah, I think DFR is the future.
How about you,
Divy?
Divy? Where do you see the DFR program? Where would you like things to be 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I would like the majority of cities across the country using DFR and saving lives through these programs. That's always been the goal since day one, and I think we can get there within these next 5 years.
All right.
Well, gentlemen, I think we're getting to the end of the show. We really appreciate your time. Time flies. I was just looking at the clock, and we've been recording for almost an hour. And we always appreciate your insight, especially Louis, you being on the field and doing this on a daily basis, and Divy, you listening to people and creating cool technology behind it. So we really appreciate your time, and let's meet again in 5 years. Actually, let's meet before that, but in 5 years and see if you guys were right about your predictions, right?
We'll see. You heard it here first.
That's
awesome.
right.
Well, for both of you, thank you for coming on the show. It's really cool to talk to people who are actually in this business and have hands-on experience. And we do appreciate you guys sharing your knowledge and your experience with the Drone as a First Responder program.
Definitely. Thanks for having us.
It's always a pleasure.
Awesome.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Haye.